Unrest, written and narrated by Brandon Mutant. Chapter 1. Northville's Eternal Rest Gardens lie like a festering wound in the heart of the municipal sprawl, its wrought iron gates perpetually ajar and beckoning with skeletal fingers to those who dare traverse its hollow grounds. The cemetery, established in 1832, spreads across 12 acres of prime real estate, a testament to the city's forefathers who believed the dead deserve prominence amongst the living. Marble angels with withered faces stand sentinel over crumbling headstones, their wings chipped and stained by decades of rain and neglect, while ancient oaks stretch their gnarled limbs protectively over the graves below. The surrounding cityscape is grown around the necropolis like ivy choking a forgotten statue. Modern buildings, the glass-fronted Northville Credit Union, the architecture of the City Hall, and the restored Victorian storefronts of Main Street all seem to lean away from the cemetery's boundaries, as if respecting an invisible force field of supernatural repulsion. Local businesses have learned to embrace the macabre attraction, their cafes named the Cemetery Gate, Rest and Pizza, doing brisk business despite, or perhaps because, of their proximity to actual death. Within the cemetery proper, generations of Northville's departed lie beneath the stones, ranging from simple markers to elaborate mausoleums. The Wilson family crypt, a neo-Gothic masterpiece of carved limestone and stained glass, dominates the northwestern corner. Its spires reach skyward like pleading hands, while gargoyles with eerily human expressions guard its sealed bronze doors. The inscription above reads, Memento Mori, in a script that was ancient when it was carved. Paths of crushed granite wind between the plots like pale serpents, their borders defined by century-old boxwoods that have grown wild and untamed. These hedges cast strange shadows even in the brightest light, creating pockets of perpetual twilight where visitors swear they have glimpsed movement in the corner of their eyes. The groundkeeper's cottage, a modest Victorian structure near the eastern gate, stands empty now. No one has lived there since 1979, when the last full-time caretaker fled in the middle of the night, leaving behind a journal filled with increasingly paranoid entries about whispering in the dark and other strange phenomenon. The true horror of the Northville Cemetery lies not in its Gothic atmosphere or decaying grandeur, but in the cyclical nature of its malevolence. Every 20 years, like clockwork, the grounds become a focal point for inexplicable tragedy. Local historians trace this pattern back to 1879, when 7 members of the Blackwood Society, a group of self-proclaimed occultists and wealthy socialites, attempting what they called the Grand Conjunction during the witching hour of the winter solstice. What actually transpired that night remains shrouded in mystery, but contemporary accounts speak of unnatural storms that seem to center directly over the cemetery for months. Lightning struck in the same spots repeatedly, leaving circular patches of ground where nothing has grown since. The morning after, only 7 of the participants were found, each of them having apparently died of fright, their faces frozen in expressions of unspeakable horror. The 20-year cycle began immediately thereafter. In 1899, an entire family vanished while they were visiting their grandmother's grave. 1919 saw a series of inexplicable fires that consumed several mausoleums but left no trace of heat damage. 1939 brought a wave of mass hysteria that resulted in dozens of town people claiming to have seen their recently deceased loved ones walking in the streets at night. Each incident seemed to grow progressively worse, leading to the mass exodus of burials to the neighboring towns' cemeteries. Modern Northville tries to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the cemetery's influence seeps into every aspect of local life. Children dare each other to spend nights within its gates, though few follow through after hearing the stories passed down through generations. The city council repeatedly votes down proposals to relocate the graves, citing both cost and preservation laws, though conspiracy has sparked about darker motivations behind their reluctance to disturb the ground. But these could have been one of the many rumors generated about the place's origins. Though all that I've written has been pulled from news tabloids, conspiracy usually follows those darker places. To my mind, every city has a cemetery. but none quite like this one. Maintenance of the ground falls to a rotating crew of contractors, none of whom last more than a few months. They arrive at strictly scheduled times, always in pairs or groups, and their work hurried and perfunctory. The grass gets cut, the hedges trimmed, and the wilted flowers removed with mechanical efficiency, but no one lingers longer than absolutely necessary. Those who have quit speak of cold spots that followed them as they work, or their tools losing power in certain locations, and of a persistent feeling of being watched by countless unseen eyes. Then came January 21st, 2019, a date that would add a new chapter to Northville's dark history. The body of Sarah Martinez, a 24-year-old graduate student at Northville Community College, was discovered arranged in a grotesque tableau amongst the tombstones. Her remains were positioned in what investigators later described as ritualistic fashion, though details were kept from the media. The official cause of her death remains undetermined. The coroner's report citing contradictory evidence, wounds consistent with animal attacks along precise, almost surgical incisions that suggested human involvement. The discovery sparked renewed interest in the cemetery's dark history, particularly when amateur researchers noted that 2019 marked exactly 140 years since the original Blackwood Society incident. Chapter 2. Have you ever had the feeling you were being watched, like some unseen eyes were tracking your every move? Well, that's how I feel every time I pass the Northville Cemetery. The place sent a chill through me that burrowed into my soul, a sinking dread that filled my gut whenever I lingered too close to the gate. I hate this walk, but every morning without fail, Duke drags me across the iron gates of Northville Cemetery, his chocolate-colored fur catching the early dawn light as he sniffs around the perimeter. Despite what they say about their cognitive abilities, the massive German Shepherd has no concept of the creepy factor that this place radiates. At least he's never shown any sign that he does. "Come on, boy," I muttered, gently tugging on his leash as he lifts his leg against the weathered fence post. "Come on, man, mark your territory somewhere else for once." Duke ignores me as usual. I can't help but let my eyes drift over the sea of headstones stretching out into the distance, some dating back to the 1800s. The morning mist clings to the ground like nature's special effects department was trying too hard this morning, I'd have to admit. It's picture perfect for all those wannabe ghost hunters and social media influencers that flock here daily. Duke finishes his business and I pull out a biodegradable bag and clean up after him. Even as I bent down, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. It's ridiculous, really. I've been here countless times, responded to everything from grave desecration to social media challenges gone wrong. Never once have I seen anything that couldn't be explained by human stupidity or natural phenomenon. Still, something about this place at night was different. The darkness here feels thicker, slimy somehow, more substantial. "Officer Richman," I muttered to myself, mimicking the way my colleagues dragged out my surname, making it sound like some cruel joke. More like Officer Poorman, am I right? The self-deprecating humor lost in the wind as I try to ease the tension I always feel around this place. Even in broad daylight, it was a nightmare given purpose. I remember when I was a kid, when I would talk to myself, when I would have to shut off the light in the basement and rush to the top of the stairs. I suppose we've all had that moment, expecting some grasping fingers to be reaching from the darkness below, only to reach the precipice and look down and see nothing. Yet the feeling lingered, didn't it? Duke lifted his ears and it broke my reverie, his skull-based radar dishes scanning the tombstones. His head traced a horizontal path as if he was following something. He barked, loud and obnoxious. Then he whimpered, damn near dragging me into the street with him. "What the fuck has gotten into you, boy?" All right, I've had enough too. Back home, I go through my morning routine with almost military-like precision. It's old habit, I guess. One of the few things I can control in my life, and I take almost obsessive pleasure in it. Each piece of my uniform gets laid out in exact order. First my press shirt, then my perfectly creased pants, my polished boots that could pass a drill sergeant's inspection, and my badge that I give a quick buff with a microfiber cloth.
Some officers make fun of me because of my methodical nature, but I've learned early on that attention to detail can make the difference between life and death. Besides, when you're the base of the joke when you're not around, you need something to set you apart. I wasn't rich by any means, but my bills are paid and my car had a few payments until it was mine, so I counted myself amongst the fortunate. But I would give my left testicle for a speedboat. I told myself I would start saving for one, but I haven't found the opportunity to commit. The drive to the station in my personal vehicle, a 2029 Honda that's seen better days, gives me time to mentally prepare for the day ahead. The car's AI assistant chirps weather reports I didn't ask for, and I silence it with a tap on my steering wheel. The station parking lot was half empty when I arrived, which was unusual, but a good sign. But then I spotted Miller's car in its usual spot. My stomach tightened. The man's been a thorn in my side since day one, and the feeling is mutual. The rumors about his domestic situation make it hard to respect him. I don't like men that put their hands on women, but I kept a professional facade. Had to if I wanted to keep my job. I'm barely through the door when Officer Chen catches my eye and makes a subtle gesture towards his office. Great. Just fucking great. Sergeant Miller wanted to see you as soon as you got in, Chen says, trying to sound sympathetic but not quite hiding her relief that it's me and not her. The walk to his office felt longer than usual, and I knocked on the doorframe, standing there for a moment out of habit of respect. Officer Richmond. Miller draws, not looking up from his tablet. Come on in, shut the door. I complied, noting that his wedding ring is conspicuously absent today, again. Do you know what today is, Richmond? He finally looks up, his small eyes studying me with what I can only describe as malicious amusement. Tuesday, sir. The year, Richmond. What year is it? I resist the urge to roll my eyes. 2039, sir. Then you know what that means, and he leans back in his chair, which creaks under his substantial weight. 10 years overdue. That's what it is. I kept my face neutral, but internally I'm cursing. I should have seen this coming. As you're aware, he continues, clearly enjoying himself, we always increase patrols around the cemetery during anniversary years. We can't be too careful with all the crazies out there. And for the last 10 years, that number has been building. I have a feeling like this year is going to be a mess. Yes, sir. My tone was respectful. But we both knew what I really thought about this waste of resources. You'll be taking the night shift, patrolling the cemetery 1800 to 0600. Sir, I'm not even on the night rotation this week. You are now, he cuts me off with a wave of his hand. Consider it an opportunity to prove your worth to the department, Officer Richman. He emphasizes my last names the same way everyone else does, and I feel my jaw clench. Will that be all, sir? Dismissed. He's already looking back at his tablet, probably planning on which officer to torment next. As I leave the office, I can't shake the feeling that this assignment is more than just Miller being his usual vindictive self. 12 hours watching that empty cemetery because of some incident that happened before I was born, it seemed excessive, even for our department's standards. The day shift stretched ahead of me, but my mind keeps drifting to tonight's assignment. The cemetery during the day is one thing, creepy, sure, but manageable. But at night, that's different. I've seen enough after dark to know that while I don't believe in ghosts, there's still something about that place that sets my teeth on edge. Hey, rich man, Officer Rodriguez called out as he passed me by. Heard you got cemetery duty tonight. Well, try not to let Casper get ya. I forced a laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. The rest of the day shift passed in a blur of routine calls and paperwork, a couple of domestic disputes, and a fender bender in the shopping district. Also a missing kid who turned up at his friend's house before we even got the search organized. Normal stuff. Safe stuff. The kind of shit I signed up for when I decided to be a policeman. But as the sun started its descent towards the horizon, I could feel the anxiety building. I'll be out there patrolling the perimeter of what some call the most haunted cemetery in the state. I check my watch, 10:45 p.m. Time to grab dinner from the break room vending machine, another glamorous perk of being broke. and prepare for the night ahead. As I choked down a sandwich that was more concrete than ham, it tasted like, I couldn't shake the feeling that Miller knew exactly what he was doing when he assigned me this detail. The sun is now touching the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and blues that would make the world beautiful if it didn't signal the start of my second shift, a reminder of the thinning numbers in my department. But if somebody was going to do it, I guess it had to be me, right? I gather my equipment, check everything twice, and head out to my patrol car. As I pull out of the station parking lot, I catch one last glimpse of Miller, who's in his office window, a satisfied smirk on his face for sure. Chapter 3. I park at the intersection of Maxine and 2nd, cutting the engine but leaving the radio humming quietly. From here, I've got a clear view of the cemetery's northwest corner, where most of the old graves huddle together like gossiping old hags. The street light at the corner flickers, probably needing replacement, but that's not my department. Time to watch the wind blow. Such a waste of fucking time. I muttered to myself, killing the headlights and settling in. The dashboard clock's digital display read 12:47. The night stretches out ahead like a blank canvas, waiting for someone to paint some action onto it. But this isn't that kind of town, and this is definitely not that kind of night. 30 minutes drag by like molasses in January, and I've counted the bars on the cemetery gate 47 to be exact. Watched 3 cats prowl along the perimeter wall, chasing mice or whatever they do best, and memorized the graffiti on the stop sign, mostly unreadable names and pictures of dicks. My coffee's gone cold, and my ass is starting to go numb. My car's Bluetooth chirps. Chen's ID pops up on the display. I accept the call with a tap to my steering wheel. "Tell me you're not bored out of your skull," she says, by way of greeting. Watching the paint dry would be an upgrade. I shifted my seat, trying to find a comfortable position. At least then I'd be actually doing something out here. Chen's laugh crackles over the speakers. "Poor rich man, stuck on ghost duty. Seen any floating orbs yet? Maybe some chains rattling?" "Yeah, turns out it's just Miller's dignity trying to escape." This gets another laugh. "Seriously, though, how is it going out there?" I glance at the cemetery gates again. It's just a bunch of dead folks being very convincingly dead. Film at 11. "You don't buy into any of that anniversary stuff?" There's a rustling sound on her end. Probably her rummaging through her snack stash. "What I buy into is people in 2009 didn't have HD cameras in their pocket and instant fact-checking at their fingertips. Something weird happens, people panic. Next thing you know, we've got ourselves a local legend." True that, though I have to admit some of those old case files are pretty weird. I rolled my eyes, even though she can't see me. Weird doesn't usually mean supernatural. You know how many paranormal incidents I've responded to that turned out to be raccoons? "Hey, raccoons can be kind of scary," she pauses. "And I hear the distinct sound of candy wrappers. But yeah, I get it. Bunch of superstitious people see something they don't understand. Add 30 years of urban legends and teenage pranks, and suddenly we're sitting on the mouth of hell." Exactly. I start the engine, decided to do a few loops around the perimeter. Sure, maybe some wannabe Satanists use this place as a book club meeting. But I doubt the Prince of Darkness is hanging out between Johnson's family plot and the McDermott mausoleum. Could be, though. I hear he likes quiet neighbors. The patrol car's tires crunch on loose gravel as I make my first circuit. If Satan wanted to set up shop somewhere, I think he'd pick a more happening spot. Maybe Miami. Better weather. Fair point. Even eternal damnation probably gets old in this weather. Chen yawns. "Well, try not to let the definitely not ghosts get you. I've got paperwork to pretend to do." "Have fun with that, and try not to fall asleep on your keyboard again. That text message last night did not make any sense." "That was one time." The call ends with her laughing. After 3 more uneventful loops, I head back to my original spot at the crossroads. This time I'm better prepared. The passenger seat is loaded with supplies from my earlier 7-Eleven run, energy drinks, beef jerky, and those little powdered donuts that leave dust everywhere, and enough caffeine-laced gum to keep an insomniac wired for a month. I settle in for the long haul, tearing open a bag of jerky with my teeth. The cemetery looms in front of me, same as it ever was. No ghosts, no demons, no supernatural light shows, just another night in Northville. Watching over the dead while they do what they do best. Absolutely nothing. The jerky wrapper crinkles as I reach in for another piece. That's when I see it. A flicker of movement between the headstones, like a shadow detaching itself from the source. My hand freezes halfway to my mouth. Eyes locked on the spot where the darkness seems to shift. Training kicked in before my conscious thought. I'm out of the car, flashlight drawn, moving with the practiced quiet that comes from years of approaching dangerous situations. When my hand touches the cold metal, something happens. A sensation, like liquid nitrogen running through my fingertips into my veins, but faster than a heartbeat. It was gone before I could process it, leaving me wondering if I had just imagined it. But there was no time to dwell on phantom sensations. I'm through the gate, boots crunching on gravel and my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The tombstones throw crazy shadows as my light leaps across them. They dance and twist, playing tricks in my depth perception. Movement catches my peripheral vision. Fabric, maybe? The edge of a coat or a sleeve disappearing behind a monument? Police, stop right there! My voice sounds hollow in the open air, swallowed by the vastness of the cemetery. No response, always at the edge of my vision. I pursue, my feet carrying me deeper into the graveyard, past the newer section with their polished granite and fresh flowers, into the older part where the headstones lean at drunken angles with names that have been worn off by centuries of weather. The beam of my flashlight catches something, definitely fabric this time, vanishing around a corner. And then I was standing in front of the Blackwood Mausoleum, its doors hanging open like a mouth in mid-yawn. Everything inside of me screamed to turn back, to call for backup, to do anything except for what I was about to do. But I've never been good at listening to that voice. Maybe it's pride, stubbornness, or maybe just my need to prove that I wasn't afraid of the shadows and ghost stories. You want to play? Let's play. My words came out more confident than I felt. The first step into the mausoleum felt like crossing a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. My flashlight beam illuminated carved names and dates with weather-worn angels watching down on my descent with empty eyes. And there, in the corner, something that shouldn't be there at all. Stairs, leading down into the earth. The rational part of my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe access to an old drainage system or part of the original construction, I couldn't tell. But as I started down the stairs, each step taking me further from the surface world, rationality feels increasingly irrelevant. They twisted every 20 steps or so, turning at sharp angles that disoriented me further. Stone walls gave way to packed earth, and the air grew thick with each turn. What felt like an eternity of descent, I realized I could no longer see the entrance above me. The only way was forward, deeper into whatever the hell this was. My brain told me to maintain situational awareness, to note landmarks and potential exits, but down here, everything looked the same. Dirt walls, rough-hewn steps, darkness pressing in from all sides. The beam of my flashlight seems weaker somehow, as if the slimy darkness itself consumed it. Finally, the stairs end at what appeared to be a large chamber. The smell hit me first. Decay, rot, and something else. Something older. Then comes the sound, a constant buzzing that seemed to fill every available space. As my light swept the chamber, I realized what I was hearing was flies. Thousands upon thousands of flies. They were everywhere, a living darkness that moved and shifted like a cloud of smoke. The buzzing grows louder as they swarm around me, drawn to my light, my warmth, my breath. They brushed against my face, tried to crawl into my nose, mouth, and ears. Panic rose in my throat as the sensation of being buried alive overwhelmed me. I flailed wildly, arms swinging through the cloud of insects. They dispersed momentarily, but my desperate movements cost me my balance. My feet slip on the uneven ground, and suddenly I'm falling. The flashlight leaves my hand, clattering against the stone before going dark. Complete darkness. The kind that makes you question whether or not your eyes are even open. The flies are still there, buzzing a maddening chorus in the blackness. My hands scramble across the ground, searching frantically for the flashlight. I find it, fingers closing around the familiar shape. Please work, please work, please work. The beam sputters back to life and I immediately wish it hadn't. Bodies. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Fabric hanging in moldy shreds from desiccated frames. They're arranged with a terrible kind of precision, like books on a shelf in some nightmarish library. But it's not just the bodies that turns my blood to ice. It's what's been done to them. These aren't just simply corpses that have been moved from their graves. They've been fed upon. That's the only word that could come to my mind trying to process this. Huge sections of flesh and muscle were missing, and some that still had tissue had more than just damage to its flesh. As my light moves across the grotesque display, I notice patterns in the feeding marks. They're too precise to be animal activity, too deliberate. Whatever did this was intelligent enough to be methodical. And as I stand there, surrounded by the evidence of something impossible, I realize that every ghost story, every urban legend, every whisper warning about this cemetery wasn't frightening enough. This wasn't the work of restless spirits or teenage vandals. This was something else entirely. Something that's been here right under our feet for who knows how long. Something that feeds on the dead. And suddenly I'm very aware I am the only living thing in this chamber. Except for the flies. The flies that have grown completely silent. The beam of my flashlight cuts wild arcs through the darkness, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold them steady. But then I hear it. A sound that bypasses my ears and goes straight to the primitive part of my brain that remembers what it's like to be prey. A wet, writhing noise like thousands of bloated bodies sliding against each other. The smell intensifies, decay mixed with sulfur and something that predates human concepts of rot. Bile rises in my throat and I fight to keep control of my stomach. Vomit rose up and leaked from my mouth and my fist acted as a haphazard dam breaking from the sudden pressure. I was growing more and more frantic, the claustrophobic space squeezing in on me as the room began to spin. I shook my head and tried to maintain my balance the best I could. Then comes a voice. It's wrong. Everything about it is wrong. It's too deep to exist, vibrating at a frequency that makes my teeth ache and my eardrums throb. The words formed in my mind more than my ears.
Who dares disturb my peace?
The voice pauses and I feel a pressure building in my skull.
Has humanity learned nothing from the last time I've lashed out?
A sound follows that I'll hear in my nightmares until the day I die. A laughing choir of dying things, all screaming in harmony. It's the sound of everything that had ever suffered finding voice at once. My hands moved on autopilot, drawing my service weapon. The familiar weight does nothing to comfort me as I swept my light back and forth, trying to locate the source of that impossible voice. Movement at my feet makes me jump. Black beetles. Thousands of them, marching past my boots with terrible purpose. They're heading towards something. A darkness deeper than darkness. A void that seems to swallow the light itself. The beetles begin to climb, forming a tower of chitinous bodies that slowly take shape. What rises before me defies description. It's vaguely humanoid, but wrong in every simple way. Its limbs are too long, impossibly long, fingers dusting the ground like dead branches. It towers above me, a mountain of assembled insects and rotting flesh that shouldn't be able to exist. One of its hands reaches towards me, dead flesh sloughing off like wet paper. Beetles falling away only to be replaced by more. My training takes over and I empty my magazine into the thing. The shots echo in the chamber, almost deafening. But the bullets might as well be raindrops for all the effect they have. A scream tears from my throat, raw and primal, as I turn to run. I take the stairs 3 and 4 at a time, stumbling to catch myself and run again. Behind me, that wet sound grows louder and closer. The thing is there, moving at impossible speed, its assembled body flowing like liquid darkness across the stairs. My lungs burn and my muscles scream as I push them far beyond their limits. I could see moonlight just ahead, just a few more steps. I smell the fresh air, the promise of escape. Something grabs me. I feel myself lifted, turned around to face it as it smashes me into the ground. Dear God, its face, if you could call it that, is a nightmare collage of moving parts. Teeth sprout from its blackened gums like unsheathed daggers. Too many teeth, all of them moving independently like crab legs. It cocks its head back like a snake about to strike, and I see my death in those endless row of teeth. Hands grab my shoulders, human hands, pulling me up and away. The creature's bite misses me by mere inches, taking a chunk of the ground out instead. Chen, beautiful, wonderful Chen, hauls me the rest of the way out of the mausoleum. We slam the metal door shut together once I'm on my feet. Her fingers moved with blinding speed, threading the chain through the bars and snapping a lock into place. The thing slams against the door, making the metal groan. Its hand reaches through the bar, grasping for us. But as it extends into the streetlight, its flesh begins to sizzle, layers of insects falling away, burning in the artificial light. The arm withdraws into the darkness with a sound that sounds like bacon hot in a pan. We stumble backwards, putting distance between ourselves and the door. My legs give out and I sit on the ground, hard, unable to take my eyes off of the mausoleum entrance. In the darkness behind those bars, I can still see it moving, still hear that wet sound of assembling and reassembling flesh. What? Chen's voice shakes. What the fuck was that? And I don't have an answer for her. My mind is still trying to process what I've seen, trying to fit it all into some kind of rational framework, and failing miserably. All I know is that the stories were wrong. The urban legends, the ghost hunters, the paranormal investigators, they were all wrong. The truth is so much worse. From inside the mausoleum comes that terrible laughing chorus again, followed by words that seem to echo through my skull.
My hunger is ravenous and my patience grow thin. I will not be denied.
Chapter 4. Here, Chen hands me a water bottle. We're sitting in my patrol car, the cemetery a looming presence in the rear view. Neither of us spoke in that first few minutes as she helped me escape. What is there to say when your entire worldview has been shattered and thrown upside down on its fucking head? The silence stretches between us, only broken by the quiet hum of the engine and the occasional static burst of chatter across the frequency. Chen wasn't even on duty. She had come to check on me, probably expecting to share a laugh about ghost stories. We can't tell anyone. The words came out of me before I formed the thought. Not a single soul. Chen turns to me, her face pale in the dashboard lights. People need to know what's going on there. So they can what? Come running with cameras and crosses? I take a shaky breath. You didn't see what happened down there. I shot it. I shot it fucking good, point blank. My bullets did nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. And I shot it at point blank. What do you think a civilian or a ghost hunter is going to do against that thing? Or anyone for that matter? Then we kill it. Her voice is hard, determined. We figure out how to destroy it, whatever the hell it is. I laugh, but there was no humor in it. How? I emptied my entire magazine into it like I told you, and it didn't even flinch. What are we supposed to use? A rocket launcher? A holy bomb? We have to do something. That body they found 3 weeks ago, I say, slowly piecing it together. That was the beginning of this shitstorm. I know it. Chen's eyes widen. You think that thing? I think whatever ritual or ceremony that originally summoned that creature. Whoever knew about it, they're dead now. Probably have been for a long time. I run my hand through my hair, finding it damp and cold from sweat. It was dormant or hibernating or whatever you want to call it. Then it woke up, hungry. The cycle, Chen whispers. That's what it meant. I nod. It feeds, sleeps, simple as that. The legends, the hauntings, the Northville incident, they're all just echoes of the times it's woken up to feed. So what do we do? Just let it happen again in another few years? No. I turned and faced her fully. We prepare. We position ourselves to be the ones in charge of this area when the time comes. And we make sure no other cops follow the same trail I did tonight. And more importantly, we keep everyone else away from that thing. You're talking about spending the next few years of our lives guarding this secret. Better than spending them years knowing that we led people to their deaths. I look back at the cemetery in the distance. The mausoleum door still stands closed, looking deceptively normal. We've got a few years to figure out how to stop it. But until then, the best thing we could do is keep people away. A pact, then, Chen says, her voice steady despite everything. If we're still alive when it wakes up again. We'll be ready, I finish. And maybe next time we'll find a way to end it for good. We sat there until dawn, watching the cemetery, making plans, thinking about the future, knowing that our lives have changed irrevocably. The thing beneath the tombstones has marked us, chosen us as its unwilling guardians. We will have to carry this secret. To be continued.